fans of the podcast, we're back, and it's time for another episode of Meeting You Where You're At. And on this episode, we speak with Isabella Mandis. She's a Harvard undergraduate and the founder of Girls Who VC. What is Girls Who VC? Well, it's the first organization dedicated to increasing the number of women in venture capital. Girls Who VC offers education, programming, and mentoring to young women who are interested in the venture capital space. Isabella recognized the grave gender disparity that existed in the venture capital space and decided to take matters into her own hands by founding Girls Who VC. She's an advisor to many organizations. She has worked within the Harvard venture space. She's done internships with venture capital organizations. I think you're really going to get inspired by this conversation with Isabella. She actually did this conversation with me from Spain, where she was working with a venture capital startup in Spain for the summer. Also, Girls Who VC has a summit coming up later this fall. So there's so much to talk about here and so much to learn. So please give a listen to Isabella Mandis coming right up. And for more information on Girls Who VC, just head on over to girlswhovc.com. That's girlswhovc.com. Isabella, I'm excited because we've had other guests on this show from other parts of the world, right? We've had a couple of guests from Vancouver, British Columbia. We've had guests from the UK. We've had guests from Africa, from Kenya. And even though, you are based in the US predominantly, you are currently in Spain. So you count as the first, I guess, non-UK European guest we've had. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
And just real quick, what are you doing in Spain this summer?
I'm working at a startup here right now. It's called Spot a Home. It's basically like Airbnb, but longer term rentals and based in Europe.
Oh, wow. Do they have plans to move beyond the European continent at some point? If you can be
I
so,
think eventually,
yeah.
but right now focusing on the European market.
Awesome. Well, that's cool. Well, I'm excited to have you coming to us from Spain, and things are going well in Madrid, you said, yes?
Yeah, things are amazing.
Awesome. Well, I'm very jealous. I think we talked about this. I've spent time in Valencia and Barcelona, but I've never spent time in Madrid. So someday we'll get there. So yeah. Well, super excited to jump in with you and talk about the gender gap in venture capital and talk about what you do with Girls Who VC. But before we jump into any of that, how about just a couple of minutes about you and your background and kind of what kind of lights you up?
Yeah, so I'm in Spain right now, but grew up in New York City. That's home for me. Always been interested in technology, knew that was what I wanted to do. Was really involved with Girls Who Code when I was younger, loved that organization and what they were doing. And did the coding stuff, but wanted to do be more like building from the other side, less technical. So started working at a couple of different startups, really loved that, loved entrepreneurship, loved meeting with founders who just kind of reach out to them, talk to them about what they're doing, and specifically passionate about education and equity. So loved working at different ed tech ones and talking to those founders. And then I was also doing some other stuff, but that was kind of what I like to focus on and what kind of drove me every day. And then got to college, joined venture capital group, and then also the MBA fund, which is a business school fund. Got to join them as an undergraduate, which I'm so grateful for, and started learning more about venture capital and just became really passionate about the field and saw that there weren't many other young girls in the field, specifically the students and friends of mine didn't even know what the field was. And so that kind of drove me to start Girls Who VC.
So back up for a second, though. How did you mentioned the Harvard undergraduate, the campus investment partner, the MBA fund? Are those just organizations that any undergraduate can get involved in, or do they have like a vetting and an application process? How do you go from like waking up one morning to joining the MBA fund?
Yeah, so there are two groups that I was part of. One was the venture capital group, which doesn't have an application process. It's a completion based. So you go through, you meet with companies, you do investment memos, and then I think you have like one final interview, but not too big of a deal. And
Mhm.
then you get in, and then the MBA fund is like I'm the only undergraduate on that. So that
Oh,
has like a
cool.
strict vetting process and application, multiple rounds of interviews and everything. So I think in that, even though I didn't have experience from the venture capital side, being able to work at startups when I was younger and just be
Yeah.
passionate about the field definitely helped.
So, yeah, and I don't want to, I'm not gonna age bias you here at all, but you said working at startups when you were younger. How young are we talking about here? Because you're pretty young right now. So younger, like how young are we talking about?
Yeah, so 19 right now.
Yeah.
I've worked at like over five startups in my life
Wow.
so far. I guess more than that now if we're counting the summer.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I started working in I think like eighth grade, seventh grade. So I was a baby. I mean, I still
Yeah.
am. But yeah, so definitely when I was much younger.
So and how did you find those startups? Were they like friends and family, or were they startups that you were just passionate about? I know you mentioned you're from New York, and obviously there's a big startup scene in New York. How at age 13, 14 do you start coming in contact with startups?
Yeah, I would just look online. I
Yeah.
mean, I was a weird like 13-year-old. I'd look online at like Y Combinator and like all of these lists and see cool startups that just inspired me and would reach out to the founders. Usually it started off not as like an internship thing, just me being like, "Hey, can we speak? I'd love to take 30 minutes of your time and just learn about what you're doing." And I got a lot of responses. I think most people were kind of shocked that someone so young was reaching out to them. And so that's definitely like always
Sure.
worked to my advantage.
Yeah.
So I just reach out to founders and even like there's one founder that I'm really close with that I reached out to him. This was when I was older.
Okay.
This was senior year actually. And I reached out
Senior in high school before you entered.
senior year of high school,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
And was like, hey, like I was working like three internships my senior spring when school was dying down. So I just like love working at startups. And I reached out to him and I wanted an internship. And he was like, look, I can't give you an internship, but I love your passion. Let's meet every Friday at this time for the next like couple months. And I'll just talk to you about my life and what I've done for the week. And you can learn more about what it means to be founder. And just like
Wow.
people like that were so
Yeah.
kind, talked to me about what they were doing and just inspired me so much.
This is really cool. I'm inspired by all of this. And I guess I'm very inspired by Girls VC. So, we've talked a little bit when you and I were chatting before about this huge gender gap in venture capital, right? And limited access to capital. And we have so many studies, very disappointing studies, right? Very, very heartbreaking studies that show consistently that women-led startups receive this disproportionate less amount of funding, right? And compared to their male counterparts, right? And there is this huge funding gap, and it prohibits them to scale their businesses. And I'm assuming that's a lot of the thesis behind why you started Girls Who VC. But I want to hear your side of the story, not just what I am presuming to be the side of the story.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that's part of it. Women receive like 2% of funding. So going back to, I guess I've always been interested in supporting female startups. I went to
Mhm.
an all-girls school growing up and
Oh,
was really involved with Girls Who Code. So having these
yeah.
spaces for women when I was younger was a big part of my life growing up. And so I always kind of heard the statistic, 1 to 2% of startups are female-led startups are invested in by venture capital funding. Um, and I guess for me, it always kind of made sense to say, well, let's look at the other side. Who's funding them? Because, if you're in these environments that are women and, I had a lot of female teachers and female role models in my life, but if you don't have that, then how are you going to have people that are supporting you and ultimately investing in you both in a mentorship way and then also obviously financial as well. So started doing research on that and really saw that there wasn't that many like statistics or just like articles even that existed talking about the lack of representation in venture capital. I mean, there are a lot talking about the lack of representation in entrepreneurship. Whether or not people are like doing things to change that is another thing, but people aren't talking about on the investment side. So that was kind of really what sparked me with Girls Who VC. But I mean, I was just reaching out to women in the field, trying to kind of pick their brains, kind of what I did in the startup world, and talk to them, learn about what they were doing. And then I realized that I was getting to speak to these amazing women and gain their insights. And I felt kind of bad just like sitting on that, having those notes in my notebook. And I wanted to be able to share that with other people.
It's interesting because, there's so many different strategies for gender parity, right? Whether it's awareness and education, which it sounds a lot of what you're doing at Girls Who VC, right? Which is to try to foster awareness that, hey, look, there's a gender gap and there are consequences to this gender gap, right? But there's more to it around mentorship and networking. You kind of touched on some of that. Is a big part of what you do affiliated to mentorship and networking as well with Girls Who VC?
Yeah, so when I started with education because, like I said earlier, education is just something that I've always been really passionate about. So doing these like educational curriculums and content is just something that I've always wanted to do. But mentorship is, I mean, the reason I'm everywhere in life, the reason I got to Harvard, the reason I built this, like literally
Right. You
everything.
got mentorship early on, especially you were talking about this person who met with you every Friday, right? I mean, that's great mentorship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've definitely, I mean, I've had mentors since as young as like middle school. So I've always like supported that and thought very highly of mentorship. So I started a mentorship program within Girls Who VC as well. So we did that a couple months ago now. And that was something that was really exciting because, I can put out all the content I want, but doing this mentorship program and seeing really like these women connect and aspiring venture capitalists meet with women in the field. I think we had like 150 aspiring venture capitalists meet with 75 women in the field. And just seeing like what came out of that. I mean, one of my friends within Girls Who VC is now getting funding because of her mentor. Other ones have gotten internships and positions. So seeing people just have those opportunities and also just even make friends. I mean, all of the older women that I've met through Girls Who VC are such mentors to me, inspire me. I'm so close with them now because of this process. So hope to be able to give that to other girls as well.
And is there an aspect to this too, Isabella, around like, so investing is scary, right? And people need to understand that there's a lot of components to investing. There's the emotional side of it. You need to feel comfortable. You need to be educated. You mentioned people in your who come to Girls Who VC are aspiring venture capitalists. Is part of what you do also just get people kind of comfortable with the stigmata of investing? I mean, my daughter's not much older than you. She's 21, and she has really just come to me and said, look, I want to learn more about investing. I want to start, I want to learn beyond my 401k. Like, I'm interested in understanding like what's an annuity and how do these things work. And is that part of what you do as well at Girls Who VC, is kind of getting people comfortable with investing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, part of it is even just knowing that it's possible and that, venture capital is a field that isn't typically gone into right out of college, but there are a lot
Sure.
of people that go into it. So kind of showing like, hey, these are some women that go into it. What do they know? What made them prepared to go into it and saying, oh, like I could actually do that. I mean, I had a lot of mentors when I was younger that were 17, 18 and doing amazing things and, on Forbes 30 under 30 and giving TED Talks and doing all of these things that made me believe, oh, like I can do something even though I'm young. And so seeing these women that are actually accomplishing these things really proves to other young girls like me that they can really do it. Um, so that's definitely a big part of it. And then also with our like blog posts and other content that we produce, I think a lot of it that we're producing right now isn't stuff that doesn't exist. I mean, but we're doing it in a way that we're writing up summaries that are actually easy to understand and not confusing. And so a lot of girls and myself too, I'll look at these websites that are like, what to know about venture capital. And it's so confusing that it's just like excluding so many people when you look at it and you're terrified. So kind of trying to like demystify that, explain it in ways that are easy to understand and don't scare people away.
I was looking at some of the content that you have like on Instagram, for example, right? And just kind of the breaking down you had around like, here's the steps to like starting a venture capital fund, right? And like very, very specific, very short, easy to understand, digestible pieces of content. How do you create and curate all that content? Is there like a village of people that are involved here? I'm curious. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a village. I definitely can't take credit for everything, especially the Instagram. The Instagram is definitely not my doing. But so we have a team of mostly college students, a couple post grad, people that help me out, and I'm so grateful for them. In the beginning, it was just me, and it's so hard. So now we have people writing our blog posts, helping us with our newsletter, doing social media. So I'm really grateful for them and wouldn't be able to produce as much of the content as we do without everyone supporting. And I think also a lot of the girls that I speak to that are helping us create this content are just enjoy doing it because, there's no better way to learn it than to teach it. And so that really helps them learn about the field.
And how do folks get involved? Like, so you mentioned this group. Is this a situation where this is growing organically because of your friends and the people that you've brought into it? Do you still actively go out and solicit for membership? I guess, how does someone kind of get involved if they want to get involved and be part of the team?
Yeah, so it's kind of all of the above. In the beginning, we started with I posted on LinkedIn and had just like a website with an interest form, had absolutely nothing else, and just posted. And then a bunch of people started filling it out and reaching out and getting involved and asking how they could help. So really all of our like marketing per se has been through LinkedIn, I would say is like 99% of the people that we found. And then started actually just like messaging people individually on LinkedIn. So looking up different schools and then typing in the word like venture, or entrepreneurship, or computer science, or economics, or something, and then just messaging people directly. I think I've messaged like thousands of people at this point, just being like, hey, I'm Isabella, this is what I'm building, I think you would be interested. So that's like all we've really done. And then in terms of getting people to join, in the beginning, it was people just reaching out, being like, hey, this is really awesome, I want to get involved. We've done a couple of things. So like right now we are taking applications for an ambassador program to help again like produce content and curriculum. So that's another thing where people like I post that on my LinkedIn and then people will kind of find that and reach out. And then a couple other ways we'll take applications for like the mentorship program we did. Like everything we do is available to everyone. We have applications for the things that are like I can't physically do mentorship programs for like 1,000 girls because I just don't have the mentors to do that. But really, it's just like, are these people interested? Like, don't really need experience, but like, are
Yeah.
you passionate about something and can you tell me about it? So yeah, so that's basically how we've done everything. And then in terms of joining, anyone can join Girls CVC. I didn't want to have it be
And
hard to
exclusively.
join,
Yep.
exclusive to join.
Yep.
I don't need to add more barriers to everything. So
Right. There's enough
yeah,
barriers. Yeah.
exactly. So really just like open to anyone that hears about us can join, and then a lot of people will reach out and ask to get more involved.
And from the time you kind of kicked off, Isabella, to where you are today, how much has membership of grown?
Yeah, so we started our launch date. Oh, I should know this. It's like December 7th or December 9th. It's one of those days.
Okay.
So it was like 7 months ago now from when
Oh,
we're
yeah.
recruiting. Yeah, so like very recently, now we're at over 2,000 members, have over
Wow.
100 mentors, 40 countries and 6 continents. So definitely grown very quickly.
Amazing, amazing amount of growth. Wow. And we kind of we came across you, right? Due to some recent press that you had received. And that's kind of where we were like, oh, look at what this person is doing and look at the excitement that they're creating around women in the venture capital space. Talk a little bit about the recent press that you've received.
Yeah, so there's an article about us in the Boston Business Journal, which
Yeah.
is so surreal. It's the craziest thing ever to like see myself there. It's wild. And so yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful to the writer for finding me, picking up the story, believing in me, saying like, hey, this is something that I think other people would be interested in. So it was crazy, it was my first, I'm just 19 and doing interview and having people write about me is just so surreal. And I found out about so many startups when I was younger and looked up to so many women because I saw them, in articles or different things. And so knowing that other people are now seeing me and maybe like that inspires them to do something is so incredible.
I should know this, Isabella, and I don't, but there are a lot of this girls who, right? So girls who invest, girls who code, girls who consult, girls who VC. Is there a common sort of touchstone for these girls who programs, or are you all kind of operating as independent affiliates?
No, we're all independent. I mean, since I was really involved with Girls Who Code, I've spoken to them about what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
but not like a group.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I was curious, and kind of that notion of like there's power in numbers, right? So if all
Yeah.
these girls who could come together potentially, that might be a really interesting opportunity. I was looking at your LinkedIn statistics, and your number has grown by like 43% in the 7 months. So that's in terms of, not in terms of people. So that's a pretty good trajectory of people joining up and who want to be a part of this, right? So that's pretty
Yeah.
exciting. Talk to us a little bit about um you have content, you have programming, you have mentorship. These are all really, really important programs to what you guys do, to not just, like you say, have public content that you produce and the content is part of it, but mentorship is another big part of it. Where do you see other areas for you guys to kind of grow and expand to in with the organization?
Yeah, so right now, another thing that we just started that we're taking applications for is a scout program. And that's really important to me because, like I said, I got my interest in the field because of speaking to founders. And, there's no better way to speak to founders than scout them. And, it's much easier to get onto a call with founders if you're able to connect them with investors. So, what we're doing with the scout program is having our scouts go out, find female-led startups, and then we're going to take those startups. Firstly, that gives them great experience talking to founders, writing up investment memos, and then we're going to take those and show them to our female venture capitalists that we have in the community.
Oh, wow.
And if they're interested in any of those startups and want to pursue them and maybe invest in them, having that scout that found those startups being involved in those calls and doing that whole process. So that's really the goal with the scout program.
Yeah.
Eventually, I mean, long-term goal would love to have a fund and be able to invest in these startups that we're finding. That would be incredible and like a dream come true.
I think it'd be
Also love
really. Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going. Keep going. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
also love to create curriculum and really just
Mm.
have like a solid like what is venture capital, everything you need to know, kind of working on that right now. So that's another project.
We've had other women venture capitalists on this call who kind of similar path to you, right? They started more with the educational aspect of it, but then over time were able to create their own funds, bring in LPs, bring in people who wanted to invest in what they were doing, who believed in their investment thesis. So I love that as a longer term goal for you, in addition to, everything else you've talked about there as well. Um, you've partnered with some interesting people. We've touched upon that a little bit. Are you actively looking for additional partners? And if so, what are the kind of partners that you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I'm always like love to do. I think, like you said earlier, like strength in numbers.
Yeah.
We've had support from the Harvard Innovation Labs, which I really appreciate, and then able to partner some people with some organizations for events. So we did one at Harvard with Pear and then at a different school with Accenture. So that's been something that's super cool and just getting to go and speak to different places. That's still, I love just going and being able to speak to other girls and sit in a room with them and talk about what I'm doing, and being able to partner with people and share their stories as well is so cool to me. But in terms of partnerships, would love to start doing like going to VC firms, meeting with people in person and doing more in-person events is something I definitely would love to do. It's a little tricky just because we're spread kind of all over the place and I don't just want to focus on,
You're very
like San
decentralized,
Francisco,
right?
New York, Boston. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, would love to do events and partnerships like that, and also partnerships with more startups and get them more involved in the community.
Absolutely. We've talked a lot about the really great stuff that you're doing and the successes that you've had, and not to bring us down, but I'm sure there has been your fair share of challenges along the way here too, Isabella. Is there, so for the people who listen to this, they're looking for inspiration. Is there a particular, challenge that you faced throughout the creation, the launching, the curating of Girls Who VC that really kind of gave you a, gave you a knockdown, but you were able to get back up. I mean, was there an example there that you could share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for founders, I've had a pretty good run in terms of like knockdowns, but definitely I know when I would speak to founders when I was younger, they would always talk about how hard it is to be a founder and how much harder it is than doing like
Yeah,
a 9 to 5.
absolutely.
And I would kind of be like, oh, but like, I don't know, like I'm in school and working at 3 startups. Like I think my life is like, I'm doing a lot of work. And after starting Girls Who VC, I totally sympathize with them because you were never off the clock. I'm constantly like, I'm going to sleep. I have ideas. I can't go to sleep until I write them
Got
all
to get them
down.
written down. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it is so hard, and especially juggling that with school. And in the beginning, when I started Girls Who VC, I was also working a job on campus. So just so much going on. And also, trying to have a social life, trying to
Yeah,
spend
right.
time with my friends,
Your
trying
friends,
to be
yeah.
with my family. It's a lot, and trying to juggle all of that is definitely a struggle, but trying to make it work.
I was going to ask you about that because look, being a full-time student in and of itself was a full-time job, right? And like you said, working with different startups. Now you've got other extracurriculars, personal, social, have you. You're, running Girls Who VC, which is its own entity and organization that has its own demands. So I was going to ask you a little bit about how you blend and balance all of that. Do you have any tips or tricks for folks that have worked successfully for you?
Yeah, I think for students, you have to realize that like you cannot do it all. Like it's just not possible. And, going into Harvard in high school, I was very, very type A, always had to do 150% on all my homework assignments, get
Right.
100% on them. Like I had to do the best I could possibly do. And going into college, and especially after starting Girls Who BC, just like mentally being like, okay, I can't put 150% into
Right.
my homework because,
Right.
I could do that, but then I would be giving up Girls Who VC, and
Something
Girls Who
has to
VC is
give.
something
Yeah.
that's really important to me. So being like, okay, obviously, like I do all my work, I'm doing well, but I'm gonna stop my studying for a test at 10 p.m. so that I can go to sleep and get
Right.
up the next morning and not
Right.
be exhausted. And so that's kind of something that I just mentally had to be okay with, which is harder than it sounds. But that's definitely something that is important to me. Also, trying to kind of move my meetings. I think this year I'm going to start doing, one of my friends only does meetings on like one day. I
Yeah.
think that's too much for me, but I'm going to maybe do like 2 or 3 days of meetings.
Dedicated meeting days, dedicated working days. Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And so trying to balance that, or, just being like, if my friends at 11 are like, hey, want to go play ping pong? Just being like, yeah,
Yeah.
my homework can I'm done. Like, I don't need to study more. I need to relax. And so much of college is just meeting people, especially a school like Harvard. I mean, the kids are incredible, the most
Yeah.
driven, passionate people, and inspire me so much. And so I just love spending time with all of my friends there. They push me so much.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a great environment where you're lifting each other up and you're supporting each other, pushing each other, celebrating with each other. Right.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
that's amazing. I was at a demo day last night for a summer boot camp of young entrepreneurs who kind of work all summer on their idea and then they present it at the end to potential mentors like myself or others to kind of who want to get involved with them. And one of the other mentors that was there said something to the effect of like, well, I'm at a point now where I'm only trying to work 3 days a week. And I said, whoa, I was like, if you figure that out, if you unlock the secret to only working 3 days a week, can you please share it with me? Because I really want to know how you did that.
Yeah, no, I definitely can't do that right now, but hopefully one day.
No, no, no. And this gentleman is definitely much later on in his career, but then both of us. So but it's a pretty cool aspiration, I think, for us to all have, right? So that's great. Before we let you go, Isabella, just is there any parting, want to make sure you kind of get across with what you are doing and why it's so important to you here with Girls Who VC?
Yeah, I guess in terms of like the Girls Who VC perspective, female-led startups, like we said, aren't invested in, are proven to be more successful. So really, like there is no reason not to be investing in them. It's something we need to do more of. women need to know about the field. I mean, thinking at a place like Harvard where people should know about the field, many girls
Right.
that I know don't. So really need to get more people into venture capital. And then also, I guess, for if there are any other like students listening, if you're passionate about something, just start and go for it,
Right.
because even if it fails, and I did so many things in high school that got nowhere, but it's all learning experiences, and you're going to learn so many different things that are going to help you in life. And so it's just worth it. And don't be scared about planning everything and making it perfect. Just kind of go with it and you'll figure it out as you go.
I want to say this. I want to say, thank you for all these targeted strategies, Isabella, that you're doing to kind of promote diversity and innovation and everything that proves that when you break down this inequity, right, this gender gap in women's representation as both investors and entrepreneurs, you just create economic growth, right? And so thank you for implementing the strategies that you're implementing to create this more equitable and inclusive ecosystem in the venture capital space. I look forward to a day when you guys unlock the full potential of women entrepreneurs and investors. I think it's going to be great.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on here and talking to me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, we'll be watching you, and we are really impressed by your commitment to drive meaningful change, and we wish you the best of luck. So thanks, Bella.
Thank you.